Okay, so our next question comes from Alejandro Road from Facebook, a personal friend of mine from college. And his question is, what is it like practicing an Afrocentric religion as a white man? Do you practice the religion differently due to your cultural, ethnicity, or racial identity? Well, to be perfectly honest, when I first came into my Ocha house with my godfather that I received my Alekis and my warriors from, he was a Hispanic man, and there really wasn't too much of an emphasis on the color of my skin at all. So it really wasn't something that I became like hyper conscious of until a little later, as like certain other things have now, people have become a lot more vocal about some things on social media, about certain ways that they feel about white practitioners within the ATRs. And I would say that inherently, as a white person, when you come into this religion, it's apparent that there is an African identity there. The Orisha are African. They are depicted with dark skin. The liturgical, most of the liturgy is in Yoruban, Spanish, English, but primarily I would say in Yoruban. The prayers, the songs. There is a cultural legacy, an African cultural legacy that is undeniable within the ATRs. And I personally don't have any problems seeing God as African. I see God as like a manifestation of all like the potentialities of humanity, so that encompasses all skin tones. I believe Orisha comes through all people, especially like when you have Ori, that is like the connection to the divine, and it's through that connection that the Orisha come into your life, into your heart, into your spirit. Do I practice the religion differently due to my ethnicity or my race? No. I would not say that I do. Again, like Asiel said, there are steps that every person goes through. That's not contingent on your sexual identity. That's not contingent on your race. It's not contingent on the language that you speak predominantly. When you have a calling to these religions, and the Orisha and the deities accept you, you proceed and you form that relationship based on who they are, and you internalize that identity, and then it just, you embrace that, I guess, to some degree.
So we're totally going to do a full video on the topic of white people in ATRs,
Yes.
or Caucasian people that are coming into the religion, because there is a bit of a hype going on with certain things that we definitely want to address and like fully break them down and like address them for social media and for everybody's
And just for the sake of having the conversation.
But that was a really good question. That's gonna have its own video. Okay, so this next question is is from Gianni in Facebook, who is also a godchild of mine. And Gianni asked, signs that you are growing spiritually. Okay, so there's something that in Ocha we call desarrollo espiritual in Spanish, or spiritual development in English. And that is from your work as a spiritual person, your tending of your egun, the tending of Orisha, the tending of yourself, and then the understanding of expansion of, for example, of thoughts versus messages that come into your mind and things of that sort. So we are all growing spiritually, and we're all in a constant state of spiritual growth. Some of you think that there's like somewhere to reach and then you stop and you reached it. There is not a destination. It is a constant thing, and spiritual growth comes in many different ways from many different people. Some people are more clairvoyant, some people are more intuitive, some people are more visual, some people are more I forgot when you're hearing what it's called right now. Different people focus and have different expansions on different areas. When it comes to Ultra, um, for example, if you really, everything to me is a spiritual expansion. But for example, if you want to name major, something major, for example, in Ultra will be when the person gets mounted or when the person brings down their Orisha. That is a spiritual expansion that is noted in the community that the person is expanding. That's an example. That is something that all Orisha practitioners have to strive for, to bring down the Orisha and be able to bring down the Orisha. And there's certain times and places when that gets done or it's allowed, but there's also other times and places in which it's needed, and then it's automatically or encouraged or something, but that is a spiritual expansion. However, as everybody goes through their natural process in the religion, everybody expands differently because we all focus on different areas of the religion. So another example of that might be having your different duties change with time. For example, what I mean by that is becoming a godparent. When you become a godparent, when you have reached the level that you become a godparent to somebody else, then that is another spiritual expansion of yourself, that now you are expanding to someone else. Your spiritual essence is expanding to someone else. However, you should not be focusing on, I don't think we should be focusing on spiritual expansions as something that you need to check off of a list. Those are all natural things and processes that happen to everyone
organically
at their own time and place, and nobody should be rushing to get somewhere, because there is nowhere to get to, is my whole point, which is another spiritual expansion, is the understanding that there is nowhere to get to. Okay, so I myself went through a phase that I felt like I needed to reach certain goals spiritually, because when I reached them, I would be like something else or be somewhere else. And then when I did reach them, then I realized that I was still searching. My humanity was still the ego is still searching for something else. So it's a constant daily thing. It's a lifestyle. Spiritual expansion is, I guess, your full spiritual growth, I assume, will come the day that we pass away, that there is that final
lifting of the veil, and
that final release, and then that final understanding. So every day of your life should just simply have a spiritual undertone into it, and that in itself is a spiritual expansion. That is spiritual growth.
Absolutely.
When you turn the mundane into spiritual, that is spiritual growth. And religiously, all your days, all your weeks, all your months have something spiritual. When it comes to this type of faith, there's something spiritual. You're always saying a prayer, you're always lighting a candle, you're always saluting an Orisha, you're always doing something that is some way, somehow related, and that is spiritual growth. That constant work, that constant connection is spiritual growth. But you're trying to level it sometimes in people, as human beings, we try to level it at a checklist or a 1, 2, and 3. And spirituality can go 1, 15, 3, and then 4, and then 2, and then 6. Because spirituality doesn't go, it's not linear. It doesn't follow a particular, spiritual essence doesn't follow a human linear understanding.
I think that's definitely an excellent point, because there are definitely, I feel, some lessons that are very hard to learn. There are just some spiritual lessons that you may go through, some trials that you may face as an individual, on a personal level, that very much so bring you into a spiritual crossroads, that bring your existence into a moment where you're presented with two paths, so to speak, or sometimes even more than that. It can seem like more than that. And it's the decisions that you make in those moments and the actions that you take in those moments that really define your character. And so it's in that, looking back on those moments, that I feel can really highlight your spiritual growth, or maybe even just like your personal growth. I think it also kind of depends on if you are trying to facilitate the development of a specific like spiritual gift that you may have versus like just overall generally well maintained spirituality. And I guess it kind of also depends on what you define as like growth in that moment, because spirit will represent itself to you, will move itself through you, I feel like in a multitude of ways. And those moments that is a sign in and of itself that you're growing spiritually, because you're wanting to facilitate a deeper communication with your spirits and with your deities, with your Orisha, your Mbongo, the Mfumbe, the dead. And I just think those can very well be also signs that you're growing.
Just a quick example, or I'm just going to say like several examples, okay? Again, the point of saying examples is just to humanize the experience, but these are just examples. So, based also on the person who asked the question, if you're reading your tarot cards, spiritual growth is when you do not doubt your tarot cards when you're reading them, and you automatically, when you look at them, you understand and hear what they're saying, without having to doubt yourself at any point. So for example, if you flip over the card and you automatically understand its meaning, that is a spiritual growth, versus back in the day that you open a book or you do something or you ask or whatever, and then that is a spiritual growth. Another spiritual growth is understanding the difference between your personal thoughts. Did I go over that? Your personal thoughts and spiritual thoughts, or like messages from the spirits. Understanding when you are thinking about something, and when something is coming into your head, that you're clearly recognizing that, so and so is speaking to me at this moment, or hearing something from an outsider. Originating from an outsider's influence, or
like it's not
voice,
internal.
like it's not internal, but it's coming into you mentally. So when you stop doubting those moments, that is a spiritual growth.
Absolutely.
So am I making sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
Making sense.
No, you are.
Things.
You are.
Another example of that is also with your own self, as a priest at whatever level that you're in, is doing certain things that you don't fear doing. So, and Aleyo has restrictions, and Aborisha has certain restrictions, and Olochas have more of the freedom, but also personal restrictions based on Orita. So within those restrictions, doing as much as you want with your Orishas is also a part of a spiritual growth that the person goes. We all become more and more comfortable with our Orishas in our own personal way as the years pass by. So every Olocha treats their Orishas differently within the context of the Orisha, but definitely in a personalized manner in how they're kept and how they talk and what they offer, what they do on a yearly basis, what they do, whatever. Every Olocha becomes more comfortable with that, and as the time passes, that is your spiritual growth. That becomes your spiritual practice. That becomes your primary form of communicating and guiding with the Orisha. And then you become so aware that what you're doing is working, that you no longer fear it and or challenge it and or doubt it. And then that is a spiritual growth.
Absolutely.
If you want to measure it in more of those terms.
Yeah. No, I think that was a beautiful answer, baby.
On a daily basis, that is your spiritual growth.
Yeah, I think as long as you're pushing yourself to grow, maybe it's not so important to like itemize your growth, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There is no checklist.
Yeah, there is no checklist.
Just be aware that you will get to where you may see somebody else. So I see people that are 50 years in Ocha, I see people that are 70, I see people that are 25, I see people that are whatever. And then I see myself at this moment being 19, about to turn 20 years in Ocha, and I just look forward to like But everybody that goes through Ocha can see themselves at 10, at 1, at 10, at 15, at, at 50, at whatever. And by those points, just be aware that you will too have whatever you consider to be spiritual growth that you see in somebody else.
I think it's very interesting to look at something on such a micro way, on such an individualistic, like day-to-day experience. I think if you're wanting to grow spiritually, your day-to-day life needs to be exactly that. Like, I want to grow spiritually, so I'm going to spend more time maybe doing spiritual things or being immersed in spirit or having these conversations at the Bovida or doing ebos, maybe start with simpler ebos that you do multiples of, and then work your way up to maybe more elaborate ebos that take like maybe 2 days to finish to complete with the Orisha or something like that. Okay, so this next question comes from Hugo Pinto on Facebook, and he asks, explain Ajagun. How do they work?
Okay, so the Ajagun, Hugo, are the warriors, what we refer to as the warriors. And that is normally the first set of orishas that people receive, as for their ability to open roads for the person. That's why they are received primarily as the first set of orishas, so that they are your beginning or your foundation into the religion. They're the fighting spirits that will conquer any evil or anything in your way to allow you to come further and further and further and further into the religion itself. To remove any shame, to remove any guilt, to remove any negativity, to remove any osobo from your life, to open your path, to bring balance to your head, to bring balance to your mind, to bring justice into your life. All of those things are what the Ajagun do, and they're the first ones received when the person starts going. Usually when you people, depending on the person and or the house, you may receive your elekes, and then after that people receive the warriors. Depending on the person, there may be slightly different things happening, but normally the warriors is the first orisha set of orishas that the person receives altogether, and then from that point forward, then they move on to everything else. So they work by Legua opening your roads, Ogun cutting away the evil, Ochosi bringing in, chasing out the negativity and bringing in good things, and also balancing and guarding over your head and your spirit and your surroundings.
Gotcha. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so the next question comes from Elaine Gallo on Facebook, and she asks, how do you tend and clean Olokun and offerings for Olokun?
Okay, so first of all, that is a question that you need to be asking your godparent who gave you Olokun. And if your godparent is not available, then you should not have been receiving Olokun with the godparent to begin with. But either way, different houses may have different things to do, but most of us tend to follow that Olokun is tended to in the dark, maybe at some point by the light of a candle, and Olokun is tended with a lot of respect, and it has certain other protocols, for example, of not looking straight into it and things along those lines. But that is something that your godparent needs to be teaching you, and you need to be learning from the person that gave you Olokun. If you do not have Olokun received, then that information is not necessary to be spoken or been given to you if you don't have it received already. But your godparent needs to be the one that comes over, and when you receive Olokun, all of that information should be given to you.
I would definitely have to.
Or explained to you. So, in offerings for Olokun, the main offering or adinu that we tend to do is usually mariquitas, which is like small diced up plantains and then fried plantains, and then palenquetas, which is I think it's wheat, grounded wheat. I think it's what it is. It's called gofio in Spanish, palenquetas, grounded wheat with molasses, and those are palenquetas. And then people also do pork chop, pork pieces, like just pork pieces of meat, and then pork cracklings, and then pork cracklings are also given a lot to olokun. But again, olokun in itself, all the offerings and things of that sort should be taught to you by your godparent. So that can also, if you look at some of my other videos, I have some eboses to olokun that I have posted on YouTube, but there are normal, and everybody knows, for example, like giving and offering watermelons to olokun, offering the palenquetas to olokun, the mariquitas to olokun, things like that. Offering, everybody, when you receive olokun, there's an agwan for olokun. If you don't know what an agwan for olokun is, it's because you haven't received the olokun.
It's beautiful.
When you receive olokun, everybody goes through an agwan for olokun, which is a major offering to olokun, which can be done constantly on a yearly basis or whenever the person needs to. So olokun, like every other orisha, has different forms of offerings and its own personal worship that we all kind of like start to learn and we all just adhere to. And then there's certain things that are taught to you when the person gives you olokun. When your godparent gives you olokun, they share with you mysteries of what you are receiving and why they're there and what they do and what they represent and all that other stuff.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely. And if you have a godparent and you have these questions, like, get over the uncomfortability that you may have asking your elders questions. That's what, I'm sure they're very okay with that. And that wasn't by any means like, that was a very like much needed question,
Your godparent needs to be teaching you and you need to be asking.
Yeah.
And you need to be picking also your godparent on the ability for them to answer your questions. If you're someone who speaks fluent English and knows Spanish, then you should probably not be getting a fully Hispanic, non-English speaking godparent to begin with and receiving things, or going to Cuba and receiving things in Cuba from someone that you're not going to speak to again, ever again, which happens a lot. Shade.
So this next question comes from Zohar Montero, and he asks, how do you tend Chango? Just received Urumila.
Okay, so Zohar, congratulations on receiving Urumila. You
Absolutely, actually.
And so how do you tend Chango? Okay, so first of all, just because you just received, I don't know what happened when you received your Manodorula. I wasn't there present, I didn't hear you eat that. Why are you tending to Chango? Why are you asking this question? It's something you should have elaborated further there, to be honest. Either way, I'm assuming that you just received Manodorula now and you're clearly not initiated, so you clearly, or an aborisha, you're not crowned. You need to go to your godparent, and your godparent of Ifa and or your godparent of Ocha are the ones that you need to be, their Chango is the one that you need to be tending because you are an aborisha already. If you're involved in the religion, you just receive Manodorula. I assume that obviously you also have your warriors, and you may probably have some other olokun or some other orisha, or be on the path to receive those orishas, but you should obviously already be having your godparents. So I'm not gonna get into like apples and the palm tree and the what that is basic knowledge of people when you start, and you should already know that if you're already receiving Manodorula, to be honest. So you should be going to your godparent and asking your godparent that you need to tend to Chango, and them guiding you and them doing it both with you to Chango and or marking it or whatever. But if in Manodorula came out that you needed to tend to Chango, that Chango needed something, in that ceremony should have been marked what Chango was asking for also, and that again, that you need to go to your godparent of Ifa and or your godparent of Ocha, and they need to do the above for you or with you.
On top of their
On
Orisha.
top of their Orisha, because you don't have your Chango. So.
Alright, yeah. I mean, that was that. Next question comes from Danny NJ. And they ask, can an initiate be crowned with Olokun?
Okay, so Danny, you also asked, or you should have asked your question. I feel slightly different. An initiate cannot be crowned with Olokun because the word initiate already refers that they have already been initiated. So can an Aborisha be crowned with Olokun, or can a person be crowned with Olokun? Yes, a person can be crowned with Olokun. However, there is in Lukumi, there is quite a drama still added to people being crowned directly to Olokun that is being slowly displaced by more acceptance, because there's more people being crowned to Olokun. And although it was a little controversial at the beginning, there's a lot more people that have been marked, that have had their head marked to Olokun, and there's more people that by now have Olokun direct crown. But we can also say or agree, as we speak candidly of religious expansion, that Olokun direct has surfaced, has become more popular in the last recent years, as there has been more of an integration with traditional religion from Nigeria, or interaction with people from Nigeria, and from people that want to push those envelopes of what can be done and what should be done. All Orisha can go direct to the head. It is also a matter of whether the Olocha wants to do it or not do it. A personal preference of whether they want to crown such and such Orisha or not. Or in Lukumi style, do Oro. In traditional, there is no Oro. Everything is straight to the head. And then in Lukumi, there are certain things that are fully straight, and then certain things that are done in Oros through the Oro ceremony. I definitely by now am fully a firm believer that we should be doing everything directly to the head.
Absolutely.
So can someone be initiated into as a priest of Ocha, as a priest of Olokun? Yes.
Yes, I actually have an Impalo, a god brother Impalo, that is crowned to Olokun direct. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so this next question comes from Zion, which is a godson of Asielos, and his question is, what tips do you have for those who want to connect to Orisha or work with them, but haven't been initiated or joined a house?
Okay, so people that are in that predicament need to be working with their Egun. Your primary thing is your Egun, your spirits, your spirit guides, and also you can work with Elegua. You can call on Elegua and set up a little spiritual altar to Elegua and whatnot. But the people will have to. Hold on a second, we're giving a break to the dog really quick. People will have to network. You will have to meet someone that will become your godparent at some point. But until you do, you have to be patient and tend to your spirits and call on Elegua and ask for guidance. I was going to say ask for forgiveness. Very Christian of me. Anyways, no, ask for guidance. Go out into nature. Go to the river and talk to Ochun. Go to the mountains and talk to Obatala. Go to a big palm tree and talk to Chango. And if you don't have palm trees, then go to a very large tree and talk to
Visit the
Chango
Orishas
there.
in nature.
Visit the Orishas in nature and just ask for guidance. And just be aware that eventually at some point you will travel, or someone will travel to you, and you will be part of a house. Everybody will find the house that your head fits in. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important, especially if you are an aleo, so an outsider who doesn't have anything, who doesn't have a godparent to guide you. I think it's very important in the beginning to be passionate about Orisha, but be very clear with them as well, especially in those beginning times, and ask Orisha to bring the godparent that is meant to teach you into your life, for them to give you signals and comfort when you meet that person, so that you know that that person is like who is meant to, play that role in your life. I think being patient, especially when you're in a Leo, is very important, because when you rush, you often miss like red flags or things that can be very obvious when you are a little bit more objective. And it's crucial that you find a genuine godparent that has your best interests at heart, that is willing to help you and willing to work with you and willing to push you and challenge you. I think is also important as well, especially when you want to develop your relationship with Orisha well. That requires a bit of sacrifice on the part of the practitioner oftentimes. And if you're in an area where where there's not really an Orisha community or practitioner community, or you don't know anyone that's practicing like publicly or openly, I think it's very important that you still like seek out people, be that online or through networking with other people, and really find a house that you could see yourself being in for 20 years, and like a god family that makes you proud to be a part of their house. Like that's what you should be like looking for there. But before you go through the initiations and receive Orisha, have a devotional altar to the Orisha. But just keep that appropriate, and that's all the advice that I really could say there is just use your better judgment, come from an open place in the heart, come from a place of like truth, and just speak that truth and love to the Orisha, and I can guarantee you like miracles will happen for you. So that's all I can really say on that. And that's all she wrote, baby. Okay, so the last question that we have for tonight's Q&A comes from Duende? Macario. And they ask, in your experience and opinion, how has the religion changed, for better or worse, and what do we need to do to unify the community?
Okay, so in that particular regard, we are people that live in 2019. We're not Oroshas that live 100 or 200 years ago. Okay, so not everybody, a lot of people in social media and in different conversations or at different points want to say certain pessimistic opinions about the religion, or like, oh, it's all this and also that, and now this and now that and now the other. Ocha is expanding. So Ocha has been expanding and is continuing to expand, and people need to not be comparing what was being done back in whatever days to what is being done now, because Ocha has to simply been shifting. And so I personally love the religion. I think it's beautiful where it's at, and it's beautiful where it's going into, and it's beautiful what else it may turn into as it continues to evolve. Instead of, I just don't focus on anything being worse or anything. I feel like everything is better. The fact that and I've had this conversation with James before, the fact that the religion is here in the United States, it went from Africa into Cuba and expanded in Cuba, it took root in Cuba, and then now came over to the States. Ocha is all over the world, but it's now definitely very clearly taking its own firm root in the States.
Absolutely.
And then it's expanding, and as it begins and continues to grow in the States, it'll just simply have to shift as it did in Cuba. So people cannot be afraid of that change and those shifts, as different people from all cultural backgrounds continuously come into Orisha and begin to add their Ache into the Ache of Ocha. So either way, so there is nothing but positive shift into everything that the religion is going. When in regards to the community, that is part of the expansion too. It is the community becoming more spiritually influenced, and there's a lot more people by now, I feel, that are more interested in community, then there are people that are interested in separating themselves. Every lay is independent and autonomous, but we're all part of the same community at the end of the day. So I do feel like the Ostra community is very unified all over, and people tend to be very friendly with each other for the most part, although we do tend to have our own personal dramas and our own personal things that happen with the religion and between priests and priestesses. But those things are human. All of those arguments tend to be because of the human ego of each individual, not because of the religious things that we should be focusing on and contributing to for each other. So unifying the community is to simply be a better person, be a better priest. Realize that there's no point in arguing. If you are arguing a point, then you clearly have spiritual growth that needs to continue.
Absolutely.
So a spiritual person does not need to sit there and curse out somebody else or blast them on social media. A spiritual person does not need to be wishing evil upon somebody else because they saw a video that they didn't like. A spiritual person does not need to be doing certain things. If those are your behaviors, then you also need continuous things. And by becoming aware of those things and removing those things from your own personal self, you are enhancing the community and you are unifying the community. And we cannot unify ourselves unless you clean yourself up first to just be nice to other people. Be nice to yourself so you can be nice to other people. And that in return will just simply create its own ripples. But the community, I feel, is definitely very unified, and it's becoming more unified as more people just simply expand their mind and their acceptance, which is constantly happening, I feel, or at least that's the part that I choose to pick.
To focus on.
To focus
your attention on. I definitely feel that you can't unify with closed arms. And what I see a lot of, especially online, especially on social media platforms, are people that very viscerally like rip other people like apart in the comments and like and just like the integrity, I guess, of what may be going on or what may be happening at that particular point. But what I think they fail to like realize in that moment is like the ache of the person, of like that priest or that priestess that's working within their own connection to Ori and their own connection to their Orisha and to their own connections of their spirits and their deities. So, you know, you may not necessarily know exactly what may have led a ceremony or something to become what it is, but also be aware that 9 times out of 10, like, you're only seeing a part of what may be going on. You know, there could be a lot going on in the background, and it's the fact that it's kind of devoid of that understanding that I feel like kind of exacerbates the problem to some degree with these like online conversations. But my advice there is to respect the ache of each other. You know, we're all walking these like paths together. We're all trying to better ourselves. We're all trying to better our communities. We're all trying to better the world that we live in. And I just personally feel that we have a lot more in common than we do that makes us different from each other. And I don't think that it's necessarily right that like certain like houses of Ocha may close their house off to like certain people. I don't agree with that. I think that is an ideology that maybe we need to let go of. And I think that in itself could help the community unify.
But on that point, that goes into Ocha is not closed off to anybody. That is personal people, personal prejudices of priests who then allow it to bleed into their religious practice.
Absolutely.
Because they don't like a certain type of person, they don't want to work with them spiritually. But that is not part of Ocha. Ocha is all inclusive.
And so yeah, I mean, a lot could be said just for respecting like the ache of yourself, your own ache, and respecting everyone else's. I don't think any person has the capacity to have the full understanding or the full answer, but we can very easily like integrate our knowledge and really like come up with something that we've never seen before, something that has never been before, because it is entirely of our creation. And our generation, the people that are coming into the religion, are carrying the legacy that will be the religion in 20 or 30 years. And I think it's very important to overcome like those prejudices that Asiel spoke on, and really put in like that work on a personal level and on a spiritual level as well, and really examine like the lessons that you're teaching your godchildren, that you're teaching your fellow like brethren of Ocha and sisters of Ocha. Like, just be aware of the legacy that you're leaving behind. And I feel like that in itself would be an excellent place to start.
Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. These are all the questions that we've had. This is the first time that we've done Q&As, and we're going to try and do it several more times and let you guys know on social media, so you guys can send us your questions, so then we can make our videos and answer them all for you guys. And definitely has been really fun. It's been really exciting, a pretty cool night. So I just want to thank you guys all. Please make sure that you sign up to my YouTube channel if you have not yet, under asieloshunyeyeo. Remember, you can find me on Facebook under Asiel Bias, and on social media, what is my thing? On Instagram. I have an Instagram now that I don't really use much, but on Instagram under asieloshunyeyeo. And James has a YouTube channel under James Oaks.
Under James Oaks, yes.
And you can find him there also, and he will be uploading videos also.
Absolutely.
Either way, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much. Ache, 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 to.